Well, thank you for all coming. This is not my normal style where I read a speech, but I'm going to do it. These are important times. I want to make sure that every word is spoken correctly. But as many of you know, I am a father. I have 8 wonderful children and an extraordinary wife. One of the primary reasons that I decided to run for U.S. Senate was because of my sincere belief that the reckless spending by those in office was bankrupting the country. And what can only be described as actions that are selfish, irresponsible, and immoral, we continue to pass on trillion-dollar debt to our children. This delusional spending has no regard for the burden placed on them and no consideration for the difficulties that we place on ourselves. It is said that a politician runs for the next election, but a statesman runs for the next generation. I've always viewed my platform as one that would benefit the next generation more than ourselves. It was a message that over 90,000 Alaskans endorsed and millions across the nation supported. But ultimately, we fell short this time. While it appeared unlikely that the vote margin would be overcome, we wanted to make sure that the vote count was honest and conducted in compliance with the law. Adhering to the rule of law is the bedrock of our democracy. We raised concerns about the election process under state law, a state law that a federal judge recently ruled was a poorly drafted statute, and that the court suggested the legislature act to clarify it. Recent comments and pre-filed bills by Alaskan legislators on both sides of the aisle suggest that they too agree the need to revise state election laws. Even the lieutenant governor has called for an internal review. All Alaskans should demand that this review is transparent and independent. I've been criticized for seeking to apply the rule of law to this election, and I paid a price for our approach. I accept that criticism, knowing often doing what is right is not the same thing as doing what is easy or popular. The easy thing to do would be to ignore the electoral irregularities and move on to other things. While persisting in this fight, I knew that my motives, and indeed my judgment, would be called into question. What is true is that I fought this fight so that candidates in the future would not have to do so. There can be nothing more serious, more sacrosanct than our election process. It's the tool we use to maintain the will of the people in determining the course of the state and the nation. When the laws governing this sacred process, laws voted into place by the people and their legislatures, when these laws are disregarded for whatever reason, all Alaskans should demand answers. And so, given the facts and my position at the time, I chose to fight for this process and the rule of law. We were not successful in that endeavor, but the fight was a worthy one, and one that I will not shy away from should I be faced with it again. As a constitutional conservative, I respect the rule of law as much as I have sought to enforce the rule of law. I say today that the courts have spoken. To my many supporters, many of whom are here today, who continue to urge me to appeal to the Ninth Circuit and even the U.S. Supreme Court, I say I hear you, but the time has come to accept the practical realities of our current legal circumstances. We shall abide by the court's decisions, even if we do not agree with them. I stand before you today to explain where we are in the process and what our future plans are. I started my run for Senate out of a sincere love for my country and my state. There's no place more extraordinary than Alaska, with its wide open spaces, rugged extremes and individuals, and unparalleled challenges. And there is no nation more exceptional than the United States of America, founded on the unshakable principle that God has given us fundamental rights that no one and no government has the right to take away. I voluntarily pledged my life and all my resources to defend this country and those principles, and I would do so again. Thank you. Thank you. Like so many Alaskans, I have grave concerns about the course our country is taking. We're spending money we don't have. I brought a message to this state, and I sounded an alarm. The way of the past, with its obsession for growing government, out-of-control spending, pork barrel politics, corrupting earmarks, and its disregard for individual liberty, is destroying our country. Now is the time for us to engage in a national conversation about the role of the federal government, its relationship with the states and the people, and the need to balance and responsibly manage the federal budget. I also applaud the efforts of the Republican leadership to not only read into the record the Constitution, but to cite the constitutional authority for each proposed law. Unlike so many people in D.C. right now, I believe in American exceptionalism. I still believe in the American individual. I still believe in the sovereign state of Alaska and the independent Alaskan. And always, always, I believe in and maintain an unshakable faith in God and His providence and grace. Our campaign was an underdog from the beginning. Going against the establishment and a political force with so much money and power standing behind it to defend the status quo was a formidable challenge that few thought we were up to. Many knew the risk of standing against such power, and still they stood with us. Our support network, many of whom we see here, and the will, passion, and foresight of a great people were up to the task. And through the grace of God, we prevailed in the primary. However, more than just a testament to the will of our supporters, defeating a sitting senator in the primary reflected a simple truth. Tens of thousands of Alaskans heard my message and knew its truth. And over 90,000 Alaskans said, loud and clear on election day, enough. And in a state that is dependent on enormous federal funding, the fact that so many Alaskans were able to see beyond today and look to the future was an amazing achievement and a testament to their character. My message was honest. The truth cannot be hidden from the people any longer, but blunt honesty has a price. The messenger may not always be appreciated. It's been said that in war you can only die once, but in politics you can die 1,000 deaths. I like to kind of focus on the resurrection part of that message. But in speaking that truth, we saw how quickly those whose economic model depends on government waste reacted. These powerful vested corporate interests, funded in part by U.S. taxpayer dollars with no-bid contracts, successfully organized against our messages of reform and fiscal responsibility. The campaign is over, but the real impact of the outcome is just starting to be felt. We've seen in just the past few weeks what direction Senator Murkowski wants to take the country in Alaska, a direction that I campaigned against and that I will still continue to oppose.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We need to demand that our elected leaders remember that freedom is not unlimited financial support funded by fellow taxpayers. Liberty is not recklessly spending us into bankruptcy. The ability to prosper in this nation and reach our full potential is not based on how much the government can give us, but rather how much it will leave us be to thrive and determine our own destiny. People ask me what my plans for the future are. I know for a fact that standing down is not an option, and I will continue. Continue to sound the alarm about our state and the nation.
Yes.
But exactly what form that will take, I don't know quite yet. I do know, though, that I have a loving family and a supportive family in life. We have a great state and the support of tens of thousands of Alaskans. My supporters were the most loyal, energetic, devoted volunteers any campaign could ever hope for. I studied American politics while I was at West Point. I've been a student of it since. I taught it at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I have never seen, and of course I'm a little bit biased here, but I have never seen a campaign so energized, so funded, so driven by the base than this. Extraordinary. That's one thing that ought to go down in the history books.
You're worth it, Joe.
Well, thank you. It's the ideals that we're fighting for that are worth it.
That's right.
But we have been blessed beyond words for your contributions and sacrifice. These were people who gave not just their financial resources, but their invaluable time. Beyond these sacrifices, and quite possibly more significant though, they gave us their endorsements. They took the value of their good word, built up with friends and neighbors over a lifetime of honest deeds and actions, and put that behind me in this cause. They placed their signs in their yard and said, "This is my candidate. I stand with him. I stand for what he stands for." There can be no greater honor, no more humbling experience for me personally than to receive the faith and trust of these good people. I will live my life trying to live up to the magnitude of that trust, so that no one who has ever placed faith in me will be let down. To all of you, and especially my incredible wife Kathleen, I say thank you. People from across the country have reached out to us. Great leaders and minds of conservative thought embraced us and our message also. Again, let me say, we are and were humbled and honored beyond words by this. This is not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning. While Alaska may not at this point have embraced the sort of reform that this nation and the state needs to survive, hope is apparent, as evidenced by the overwhelming message sent to D.C. in this last election cycle. The American people are increasingly rejecting socialism, and conservatives are rejecting career politicians who stand for nothing save self-preservation. These are great days in that regard, and all who value liberty should take heart at these recent events. There is still much to do, but the light has shown, and I believe more and more Americans and Alaskans will wake up to this light and embrace, not oppress, those values that for so long in our recent times we have forsaken. Whatever comes next, I can only make one promise. I will work now and work for the rest of my life to educate and inspire, to fight and protect the things that have made this state and this nation great, and will defend with every fiber in my being the hallowed principles outlined in the divinely inspired document that for over 200 years has not just ensured our freedom, but has been a beacon of hope for the entire world, the Constitution of the United States. Where corruption and complacency threaten to weaken it, I will draw the lines of battle and step into the breach. I would ask those who believe in these principles and share this love of liberty to step in with me.
Amen.
Thank you, and thank all of you for the privilege of being your candidate, and may God continue to bless our state, our country, and guide Senator Murkowski in her future actions. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions.
Are you looking for a job?
You know, right now I think the plans are, if we can scramble the resources for it, to go to Disney World sometime, right? Isn't that what everybody does?
That's what everybody does, right?
No, right now we're just we're considering our options. Obviously, like I said, we want to be a force of change. We're going to continue to speak out. I've not reopened my law practice right now. Don't intend to do so. But frankly, our effort is not done. And we still have lots to do, and it's not just me. It's a number of other political figures, such as myself, that really do desire to turn this nation around. We still have a phenomenal group of people in this country that have at their heart a desire to get back to the foundational values of the country.
Right.
That's what I'm going to continue to fight for, even at my own fiscal cost. I mean, the fact of it is, we've got to do it, because if we don't now, we might not have a nation left to save in another generation.
Thank you.
No more further legal challenges?
No.
Okay. Rich, and then
Speaking of your own fiscal costs, how are you supporting yourself and your family? Now, have you supported yourself for the past couple months?
Well, that's a good question. I appreciate you asking it. There has been some speculation in the press that somehow I've been paid from the resources from this campaign. I've not paid myself one dime through the financial resources of the campaign. It's been a struggle for us, there's no doubt about it. The campaign was able to return or actually pay back the loans that we loaned to the campaign back this past summer, and that's what we're living on now. But at some point in time, we are going to have to generate revenue, obviously, in order to move forward.
So you're not using any of that money for personal campaign, for personal
Not at all.
spending at all?
Not at all.
Nothing?
Why not? It's legal.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, FEC does actually allow a drawing of a stipend. We chose not to do it.
Okay.
You know, we have so many people.
Legal and moral.
Yeah, let me point out something else. This campaign was not funded by big fat corporate donors. Okay, this was a campaign that by and large was funded by the little guy and gal out there giving $100 or less online to this campaign. I really felt like it was not appropriate for me to utilize that money for personal gain or even for a stipend, even though the FEC allowed it. I mean, there are people that are struggling that gave to this campaign because they so believe in the ideals of the campaign. The people that have worked on this campaign, that are on staff, and it's a very few number, were paid a pittance. I mean, we, I think, stand in very good regard compared to other campaigns with how we've handled our finances. Even the lawyers that have been involved in the challenges have largely been working in a volunteer capacity. We've certainly paid some, but the reports in the press about hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent on legal fees is simply inaccurate.
Mr. Miller, what then, in the sense of fiscal austerity, what then of the $75 donations, the $100 donations to your recount fund through various websites, are you going to send any of that money back to people who earned it in the first place?
Well, that remains to be seen as to how we handle the funds that are left after this. We're still contemplating that. And certainly we're going to listen to our supporters with regard to how we do that. You know, that's really far off down in the future at this point. There are a number of things that have to be done in ramping up the campaign that will have cost. And so the decision as to what funds are left will probably remain for the day when that ramping up, when that final accounting ends.
a few more questions?
Yeah. I'd like to know if you're considering running for Congress or any other offices in the next couple of years?
You know, I've heard speculation in the press that's not from anything that my campaign or myself has said. We've not considered that at this point. We're not making plans for it at this point.
Or working on campaigns of other people?
Haven't done that either. Yeah, we've been really focused on, the legal fight has been very involved. I've been very engaged in it. It's been a full-time job. It really has not left time for much planning or otherwise. It is, you know, we raise serious concerns that, again, a federal judge said actually were substantial. You know, we've got obviously other issues which even the state legislature now has seen as needing to be addressed. We're excited about the results of the work that we did on this legal challenge because I think it's going to lead to more transparent, clearer standards that are applied in future elections, and that's good for Alaska. So I think we really accomplished a great deal in what we've done over the last several months with respect to that legal challenge. And one of the other things that I've mentioned is it's not just the attorneys that were engaged in that process. We, in fact, more hours were spent by the volunteers on the ground doing the reviews than what the attorneys spent. And I got to tell you, again, many of those volunteers are here in this room right now. How many here went to Juneau? I mean, you know what, a dozen of you? I mean, and that was, did any of you get paid for that? No. I mean, that was a volunteer deal. And I, you know, again, just humbled and honored by that outpouring, but it's something that's good for Alaska. You know, obviously, there was a vote margin, that there was a hope that we would overcome, but again, at the base of it, what the result is it's moving the state forward. Even the lieutenant governor has indicated that an internal review will be done. Again, we hope that that's an independent, exhaustive review, and that the end result of that is solid statutory changes that will help create a more transparent election process in the state.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Looking back on it, do you have 2 or 3 things during the general election that you regret and think you did wrong? Or do you think you were just beaten by ANCSA Corporation money?
Well, I mean, there are always things, looking in retrospect, there are 3 or 4 dozen things I would have done differently. I mean, this was the first statewide campaign that I've run. And in fact, the people, again, that were involved in this campaign were largely political neophytes like myself. That had not, I ran, of course, for the state legislature back in '04, but the statewide campaigning, the factors that are involved with it, entirely different. So I'm certainly very proud of the efforts we made, but of course mistakes were made. Of course things happened in the race. Would have preferred not to have seen the federal contractors involved in this race. We believe that was an illegal act. That's unfortunate. But that, you know, happened, and the FEC is looking into it. A complaint was filed, and hopefully it won't happen in the future. But the end result of this is that certainly we've learned. If we were ever to run a future race, which we aren't planning, we'll absolutely take those learned occurrences into account.
Have major players like Senator Jim DeMint, former Governor Palin, have you conferred with them before making this decision?
I've certainly talked to some significant political leaders, but I'm not going to reveal the personal context of it.
They were aware of you making a decision and what you're doing now? Yeah.
I don't think anybody, even in this room, well, with a very few, none of the supporters knew what I was going to make. In fact, this is a very difficult decision for us. I mean, we are confident that we're right on the law, despite the fact that we are going to abide by the court's decision. The fact of it is, you've got a Ninth Circuit that is unlikely to be friendly to us, very unlikely. And then there really aren't the facts on the ground that probably would lead to cert at the Supreme Court. It was time, given these practical realities, to turn to the new direction we're headed right now. And frankly, again, that does not mean that we're going to ignore all these things that happen. That does not mean that we're going to sit back silent as the legislature considers changes that will, I think, make elections more transparent. These things that we've learned are going to be applied to the future to make Alaska a better state and to assist in the election process in the future.
So there are people on both sides of the aisle who agree the election process could be better. How much do you think we should spend to do that?
Well, I don't necessarily think it requires a spending issue. I mean, it requires some changes in the law, like, for example, at the precinct level, not allowing ballots to be destroyed. Now, that's a good first start. Making sure there's a chain of custody of ballots. I mean, right now, you've got a private contractor that is in charge of ballot security that has ties to a major opponent that I had in both the primary and the general. I'm not going to name names, you can figure it out, but I don't think anybody in Alaska should feel secure with that type of an arrangement. I think there are many, many other things we've uncovered during the course of the election. The fact that, well, I won't go into detail, you can read it in the briefing that we've already filed, and I don't want this to sound like sour grapes because it's not. This is about making the system more transparent, making sure that future elections are run according to the law, and that we have clear standards that can be applied. And I'm excited because on both sides of the aisle, changes are being made, and there are changes that aren't going to cost a lot of money.
Maybe one more question.
Do you think that you dragged this on so long now that you've lost political support, particularly in the center?
Ask a question instead of making an accusation.
We are the voice of the people. Listen to us.
Well, anyway, I think, again, in answer to your question, this has been good for the state. This is something that has not, I mean, our support has run, and I get calls, and my mother-in-law is still checking her voicemail and answering the phone, and I think she said, Mary Sims, and I don't want to start naming names because there are thousands out there, but 90 to 95% of the calls have been overtly positive and supportive. The funding has been supportive. It's very clear that people want to see the rule of law established. They want to make sure that it obviously creates transparency in elections. And again, it's also a voice of support for the ideals that we're continuing to champion, and we'll continue to do so in the future. But I thank all of you for coming. I've got another event I've got to run to. I want to talk to some of my supporters first. So thank you very much, and I wish you again a happy New Year.
Thank you.